Morning, Vic.
Morning.
I've got a three-part Marcus Epps question for you. Do you think he's going to be ready for Monday? Is he in contention to start if he is? And at one point he was your third safety. What did you like about him?
Yeah, yes to the first two. And three, he's an experienced safety. He's got good instincts, got good feel for the game. We'll have to get a feel and a barometer about where he's at, missing the last 4 or 5 weeks, whatever it was, where he couldn't practice anyway.
What was your evaluation of Sydney's first start?
But it was a lot like the rest of us, some good, some bad.
When you watch back, what were the biggest issues with the run defense?
Biggest issues were, one, they run the ball very well. I didn't do a good enough job of preparing our squad for the quality and the diversity of their run game. And we didn't play the run and the blocks the way we had been playing.
Jalen Carter didn't really look like himself. What's your read on what was going on there?
Yeah, it was a lot like the rest of us, some good, some not good. I think we were all guilty of that.
He suggested after the game that the shoulder or some sort of injury is plaguing him right now. Is that a factor? And there were several times when he kind of took roundabout ways on defense. And is he trying to avoid contact there, or is that just him kind of freelancing?
Yeah, he does have a shoulder issue. He's been playing with it. Late in the game, he had a great play with it. But yeah, it's definitely something there.
With Jihad, you had so many defensive snaps, not being able to get him on the field. Is there something other to that, or just that?
No, probably should have gotten him in there for a few. That'd be my fault there. But, obviously with the run game, the way it was happening, and that's been a strength of Nakobe's, we wanted to leave him in there.
Is that your plan going forward, to try to find him some snaps?
Yeah, probably.
And what dictates when you put him in?
Kind of how the game's going.
With Jalen Carter dealing with the shoulder, is it possible that Ty Robinson might factor more into the rotation there?
Possible.
The run defense as a whole, it seems Darnell Wright would kind of wash things down. Is that something technique-wise, or is it more about that their run, sort of the motions and things like that?
Probably everything you're saying. I don't remember the plays in particular you're talking about, but we just didn't play it well enough, both from a technique standpoint, and I didn't coach it well enough.
What are the correcting points?
We got to play with better technique. We got to fit things better, and I got to coach it better.
What kind of challenges, speaking of the run defense, to the Chargers face? I mean, they have a pretty good running game as well.
They do. They've rushed for 200 yards on 2 teams this year. Greg's always done a good job running the ball schematically. They have big tight end, big fullback, pretty big O-line, good backs. They run it very, very good.
Preparing for the possibility of Herbert versus the possibility of not Herbert.
Yeah, we'll have to prepare for both quarterbacks. Probably knowing that if Herbert plays, he'll be in the pistol a lot and in the gun. But yeah, we'll have to be ready for both.
With Jalen Carter, what he's dealing with, can he get through the amount of snaps he's used to?
We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
In knowing Harbaugh and Roman the way you do, what's the key in facing that type of offense, that type of team?
Well, we've got to play the run well enough to where they just don't run it a bunch. And without, they run it, and like most teams that run it well, they have a good play-action game and not give up the shots in the play-action passing game, which they do a good job of.
Now that you've had Jalen back for a decent amount, how do you think he's fitting into this group?
Very well. He likes being here. The other players like him being here. He's a good dude, and we're thrilled to have him.
What stood out on Hunt's interception?
He just had a feel late in the down that it was going to be a screen and stopped his rush and went up and got it.
What are your thoughts on possibility of getting Slay back?
That's a hot question for Howie there.
That cornerback two role overall, Slay or not, how do you think has Adoree settled into where you're comfortable not looking at maybe Keely or Jacorian at this point?
Yeah, at this point, I would say so.
Your defense played 87 snaps, 33 more than the offense, and we've seen a lot of that over the last few weeks. How do you adjust to that? And then how do you get your players not to become kind of too cognizant of how they're kind of had to carry more of the load with the offense not producing?
Yeah, I mean, we have no control over how and when we get on the field. We can only control how we get off the field. And, you know, we didn't do a good enough job of that in this past game. We had been in the previous games. And we got to get back to where we're playing better defense.
When you do play that number of snaps, how does it change how you go about the rotations?
It does. It can, especially up front.
A couple of the down performances were on short weeks. Do you find any through line there?
I don't know. Obviously, the statement you made is correct. But, you know, the other team's playing on those same short weeks, too.
Couple more?
I know you're not facing him on Monday, but what's your Khalil Mack scouting report?
Really good player. Well, you know, I only had him for the 1 year in Chicago, and he and a couple others transformed our defense when they got there. And he's a tremendous player, you know, and a great dude.
When you mentioned, obviously, Herbert might be in the pistol or shotgun a little bit more, what does that change for you as a defensive coordinator?
Not a lot, really. They are a team that likes to be under center a fair amount. Most of the run game that they do from under center and play pass game, they can do from pistol and the gun. It's just he'll be back there more.
What's the difference defending under center, or I guess the challenge defending under center relative to the gun?
Well, I think anytime you know you're under center, it does help some of your play pass game as far as the defense diagnosing it or not. You know, when they're in the gun, it's a little bit easier, but not significantly. But just being under center, I think, puts a little bit more indecision for the defense.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys.
Morning, everyone. Hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving.
You too.
How did Covey look in his first action?
Yeah, obviously a familiar face with Covey. I thought he did a good job. Difficult conditions out there being windy. Only had really that one opportunity to return it. I thought he did a nice job. It was one of those punts that we call it was so bad it was good in terms of it came off Torrey Taylor's foot kind of sideways and it was short. Then it just kept rolling. And we didn't know, if he didn't pick that up, who knows where that ball would have rolled to. Could have been to the 15, things of that nature. He did a good job of kind of corralling it, getting square. Then he made 2 misses and got 9 yards out of it, and kind of vintage Covey making something out of nothing, to get us that first down in terms of the return. So I thought he did a good job of battling against, the conditions, the kickers, the punters right there. So it was a good to have a familiar face back there and Covey back.
Is that the way that's coached, like when a ball's bouncing like that?
Yeah, obviously we want to try and catch everything, but at times, sometimes it's just a mishit and it's short and everything of that nature. And obviously you don't want to put, the team at risk if you can't really corral it. And it's like, all right, let's just salvage it and see the next play down. But it was careening towards our end zone at a pretty good pace there, and he did a good job of just kind of corralling it and getting what he could off of it.
You mentioned a tough kicking day in general. The missed kicks by Jake, is it more chalked up to that, or did you see anything from a technique standpoint or anything like that?
Yeah, with the extra point, obviously, we just can't, we want to make sure when, we have those closer range field goals, extra points, that we do our job and get points on the board and don't put ourselves in the scenario that we did have to do at the end of the game. I thought he struck that 52-yarder pretty well. It was just in the tougher end of the stadium, going into the wind. It was going straight. Then obviously, the wind coming out the west was bouncing back off the stands, and it took it at the end right there. But obviously, I'm not too upset about the 52-yarder because he really did strike it pretty well. We just can't put ourselves in those predicaments with, those shorter field goals, just going through our technique and just our fundamentals of getting it through right there.
Facing that drastic a change in wind direction on one side of the field or the other, how much does that change, how you would approach, or I guess Nick, from that point of what you do in those scenarios?
Yeah, it just goes through the communication from the pregame, how the guys feel, what direction. Maybe you're a little bit, you could extend the line probably a little bit more going one way when you do have a little bit of wind. But it just goes throughout the communication throughout the entirety from Jake to Coach Sirianni to myself in terms of what we feel comfortable with, and almost every quarter is a different entity because the winds can obviously switch right there. So it just chalks it up to the communication. And again, in that situation at the end of the game, that was our best chance to put us in a winning situation, possibly get attempt another onside to get it. So, everything we go through is not one we second guess. We feel confident in going throughout the communication from, it doesn't just start in the game. It starts, an hour, 15 minutes before the game when they're out there getting ready.
Is the plan to go back to Gibson when he's healthy, or is this Covey's job going forward?
Yeah, everything's so fluid. You just never know how the roster is going to be dictated week in and week out. Obviously, there's, you get injuries, you get people banged up, scheme, things of that nature. So we just take it day by day and get everybody ready to get their numbers called. Obviously, there's been guys that have been called up on the day of the game. So it's just one of those things where we do here in the special room to make sure everybody's ready to go.
Do you have a preference?
Do I have a preference? I think they've all shown that they could do it at a high level in terms of that. Xavier obviously had the one in Dallas where we'd love to have back, but he also showed some promise there. But then you get Covey, who's shown that he could be a very elite returner when he has the opportunity. So there's really no preference. I think it's just the opportunity to have an abundance of guys that can do it.
Was it an issue, excuse me, just waiting for Covey to be fully healthy to kind of get him that chance, or was it more, Xavier getting hurt?
Yeah, I think it's just more of, the influx of how the roster, moves week in and week out. Whether it's injuries, like you said, with Xavier going, having that shoulder injury, then, if a different number on the, a different unit is low, you got to use that from an elevation standpoint. But it just happened to come up that it worked out naturally like that, organically, where, unfortunately Xavier got hurt, and, we're hoping that, he gets fully healthy and ready to roll. Then, having Covey being able to be elevated, then signed to the active right there is always a plus for us. And, it was just from the scouting department being able to give us those options when things do, come up. Obviously, it's a long season.
Onside kicks have been pretty difficult to recover mathematically, statistically. How do you even go about trying to find new ways to recover a kick, and what's that process like?
Yeah, it just kind of goes to what Jake likes. Practicing kicks, we practice it throughout the week. A lot of it is just chance. Whether it's a fortuitous bounce that maybe it hits them and now it turns into a scrum more than anything else. I think this past week, New Orleans and Miami had one, and it was by a sliver of a hair that he got it past the 10-yard mark. But I thought Jake hit a good ball right there, and you can see that second bounce is always the bounce you're looking for because that's always the one that's most mysterious. And kudos to Chicago and Roma Duze right there to get it down right there. But it took the hop that we thought it would off the grass, and we were just hoping that he misplayed it or it hit him, and now it turns into a scrum.
How much do you guys miss Sidney when he's not fully with the special teams group?
Yeah, I know. In terms of you miss someone, yes, obviously, but that's nothing we hold ourselves on like, hey, we're missing a guy. We can't play at this level. We got to play at every level we possibly can at the highest. I thought, they battled throughout the entirety of the whole thing. And, the one that got out, which is a poor, we made a little bit of a fundamental mistake on the kickoff of kind of diving inside instead of outside. But, when you lose a guy that has that caliber of Sidney, obviously it's going to be the entirety of the group to rise to that challenge. And I thought we did some good things. I think the punt coverage is a really good job. And Keely's done a really good job over the last couple of weeks on the outside of Manny, whether it's in the punt return game or as a gunner. Then he made a big tackle for us on kickoff. So it's just one of those things where, again, the greatest sport of all time. It's not just one player. It's all 11 in terms of, giving us the best chance to win.
How do you think Darius performed filling in for Sidney on the outside?
Yeah, I thought Darius did a good job, especially against, Devin Duvernay, who, back in the day in Baltimore, he was a very dangerous returner. We're going out there, running, keeping it boxed in, that return that was going to our left. He did a good job of sending him back, him and Cam Latu. Obviously, we kind of missed a tackle right there, which we would have loved to have inside the 20, but he kind of kicked it back into Keely, and, it goes back to the team game where you're able to flip the field position, with a 48-yard net. Now they have to go into the wind. Hopefully, you're able to flip the field in that case. But I thought Darius did a good job of, having his first real taste of being a four-core special teams player, and he's only going to get better the more times he's going to be out there.
What stands out about the Chargers special teams unit?
Yeah, they're very a physical unit, very similar to how Coach Harbaugh likes his teams. Obviously, firsthand when he was the head coach at Stanford and I was at Oregon, it was always a physical unit. Same as now, they got two linebackers in Wax and Deshaun Phillips that are doing a really good job. You see Tui out there. You see Bud Dupree, a guy that was a first-round draft pick almost a decade ago, now playing special teams and going hard right there. So it's a physical unit. I respect what Vic has done as a coordinator there. So we have our hands full, and obviously they have a dangerous returner in Darius Davis, who, he's had a couple touchdowns called back. He had one this year, I think, called back. So we have to be really good discipline-wise in terms of fanning the field right there, getting in our lane. Integrity in tip-top shape than just being as physical as they are.
We'll do a couple more.
A guy like Jahad Campbell, who was playing defense, pretty much the entire game earlier in the season. What is kind of his learning curve as far as playing special teams, and what have you seen from him so far?
Yeah, obviously going through it, it's just the roller coaster of the season for a rookie, but he's done a good job for us. Obviously, he got a little bit more involved over this last week, playing both punt and punt return. But he's done a good job for us. He brings some physicality, brings athleticism, obviously, to the table. So it's just the more times he sees it, the more familiar he is, the faster he's going to play. And I think he's going to keep getting better in terms of that. But he sits in those seats right there, and it's great. He's got Smile, he's got Nakobe. He can lean on Zach Bond, who's played predominantly a lot of special teams early on in his career. Just questions in terms of that, but he's always engaged and wanting to go forward to help this team win in any way he possibly can.
I assume that's probably something he didn't do much of at Alabama.
You always look back and see how much they did play, and obviously with Coach Saban, a lot of those guys did play on the special teams units out there, so it's not foreign to him. But he obviously knows, here in the NFL that third phase is a big priority, and he's done a really good job for us.
In Patrick Johnson's case, you called him up, but if he can't be elevated anymore, how's Josh Uche in that role? Because it's a little different than the way you started the season.
Yeah, and obviously, how the roster fluctuates going up and down. Josh has done a really good job. He made some big tackles for us on kickoff coverage, played some good reps for us on punt return. So, we're always going to piece these guys into the spots that they can excel at. And I'm not going to ask them to do something that they're not comfortable with or they're not going to truly excel at. And I'll find somewhere else to put them in a place where they can.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. it going? You run us through the two-point conversion, and it seemed like maybe there was a little confusion on that play.
Yeah, so when you have two-point conversions, you're pretty much looking at, they have two ways of doing it. They could say, hey, we're going to go all out pressure, we're going to do, max zones. And so when you design those kind of plays, you want to make sure you're in the best of both worlds. And unfortunately, we had a little bit of a miscommunication on that play. And so that's where we got to continue to work through. We had a few too many of those. And we know that's part of all of us. That's coaches, that's players, that's everybody. So we got to make sure we're on the same page so those things don't happen anymore.
You mentioned the miscommunications, and Jalen mentioned not being on the same page with Devontae on that,
Mhm.
on that one play. Where's the breakdown in miscommunication, in particular those types of plays when it's a choice route?
So sometimes on those kind of plays, right, it's a matter of just making sure they're seeing the same thing, right? We try to do the best we can as coaches and players, putting everybody in those moments, whether it's in the classroom, in walkthrough, on the practice field, because it is important. You can't simulate everything, in the heat of battle, because ultimately those, everybody on the field, they're human, so you're processing at a fast rate, the clock's going, and you're seeing it, you're trying to make hand gestures and try to get everybody on the same page. So when things like that happen, you got to go back to where was the breakdown? Did we cover it? Has it been talked about enough? And ultimately, it was just a mistake, and that's what's hard. It's hard to have those, and it's hard when those happen because the guys, whether it's coaches, players, we all take them to heart, and it's disappointing because we knew we missed one, but we also got to learn from it. We've had a few too many of those, and we know that. But as we go, we got to continue to push through that so those don't happen, and we can be on the same page. And if it does, why did it happen? Okay, there could be a human error, and then we got to move on.
Kevin, in light of the incident at your house, how's the week been?
At this point, right, we're ready to focus in winning the game. Unfortunately, it happened. I've been here for 5 years now, and it's been awesome. I mean, this is such a unique place to coach and play. It's very special. We've been to, 2 NFC Championship games. We've won at Lincoln Financial, a Super Bowl. The parade is it's an amazing atmosphere to be a coach and a player. And as coaches and players, we all know that part of our job is to handle criticism. And so it's perfectly acceptable to sit up here and talk about what's going on, how to fix it, what we're going to do going forward, and we know that. But when it involves your family, obviously crosses the line. And so that happened. And at this point, we just got to move on. We're trying to win. That's all we want to do is focus. Whether it's my family, whether it's the team, all we're trying to do together is focus on this week. We've got a long week, which has been good to have an extra day of preparation and go out to LA and beat the Chargers.
Being in that chair, how have you learned to deal with the criticism that comes with it?
When you first start coaching, it's always there, right? And as you start to develop your career and you move up and you move up and you move up, you got to learn from people. Nick does a great job with all of us as coaches, just preparing us for these kind of moments and different mentors you have. And so, the pressure's there, but we all accept it because we ultimately want to be at the highest part of our coaching career and continue to working through that. And this is part of it. It's a challenge, but it makes it fun. And when you look back on it, you hope that you have more good than bad memories. And when you go through the process like this, it defines you as a person in your career, but not as an individual, not as your family. So I think when you look at the big picture, it's just a piece of who we all are as coaches, who I am, who my family is. And ultimately, it's fun. It's a great career that we're in. We get to do something that very few people get to do. I mean, we're one of 32. I am, Nick is, we all are. So in the world, and when you look at it that way, we're very fortunate, and it's exciting. There's nothing better than winning a game in our stadium. There's nothing better than going on the road, winning a game in front of all these Eagle fans. And so it's very unique and it's fun.
In terms of the offense, Nick was saying that you evaluate everything.
Mhm.
It's every area that we need to improve on. But what was, over the weekend, what was your role in evaluating everything? And, just in terms of what to improve on in every area, what hasn't worked that you thought would?
So really, we've had a couple of these little mini buy things now, and I think I talked about this before. We've done a good job, and Nick's obviously heavily involved, and he's been, every year of just self-evaluating and seeing what trends are, where we're at with things, what we need to improve on, whether it's coaches, players, scheme, every little detail like that. So I think these are good assessments for us to work through, and we're all involved, and that's what's kind of cool. He's not just somebody that says, this is what I want, this is how it has to be done. It's all of us, together working through this as an offensive staff, with him, and every coach has a big role in it. And so when you process through information, you've got to decide, is this something that is, a schematic issue? Is it a execution issue? What is it? And then what are we doing well? And then what do we have coming up down the line, whether it's defensive schematic issues or things we know that we need to improve upon. So it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of information, but I think it was very beneficial to go through that the last couple of days. And you have to be honest with yourself. You can't just be like, well, we could have did this if this would have happened. Well, that's not how it works. So we want to fix it, and we're trying to fix it, and that's what's encouraging, that we found good ways.
The other side of that coin.
Go ahead.
You mentioned the full staff.
Mhm.
Obviously, we talked to you and Nick a lot of times for
Yep.
a reason, but, what is the collaboration like with the full staff? Like, how do you utilize them? Where do they fit in kind of their roles and leading up to the game?
So really, everybody, just in general, we meet a lot together as an offensive staff. We were just up in there right now going through, protection meetings and things like that. So it's important to do everything together so that we're all on the same page. And everybody has a voice. There's really not one person that you can say that can't contribute in any conversation. And that's what's important to having a good staff. And I think Nick promotes that, and he's done a good job of that throughout the years, no matter what our staff has looked like. Whoever's been the coordinator, whether it's myself or Shane or Kellen, we're all in this together, and we all have to talk through these things, because when we get out there on game day, the communication has to be at premium.
The other side of that coin of having that extra time has been the short weeks, which
Correct.
have not been as successful. Is there any theme that you guys have seen with that?
Not so much, because previously we've been pretty good in those spots. So I wouldn't say that's been anything. We have not changed, as far as how we've done things with the scheduling and the walkthroughs and the reps and the installations. And that's something we're going to continue to evaluate, because we have obviously another one the following week when we get the Raiders. So there hasn't been anything specific that's come up.
When it comes to the play,
What does it mean to you when, Nick repeatedly says, you're going to stay the play caller, that he has your back, basically? I mean, how important is that for you to hear?
I think when you go back to just when him and I got here together, we have a strong working relationship, and I know he trusts me and I trust him. So I think it goes back and forth to where, he puts all of us as coaches in spots to where we can be successful, and that's what's important. And it does say a lot, and he knows that we're going to do everything as a staff that we need to do to get the win and get the job done and continue to improve. And so I think just, him having confidence in all of us together, really says a lot.
Asked you a few times this year about Jalen's running. Is there a reason why he's not running as frequently? And then when you see your most productive drive happen when he ran, is that something you want to tap into now?
I think, we've talked about this before. I think as we go forward, he's going to continue to be a part of the offense in some of these design runs, and we just have to pick and choose when they're available, and when they present themselves. And sometimes they do in moments, and he's done it the last couple of weeks, and we just got to continue to lean into that.
How much of the playbook is being utilized on a week-to-week basis?
As far as the overall playbook, I think when you look at it, there's certain things that we generally like to do from week to week, and there's other ways we're trying to find new things to try to help create explosives or do different things. So I think when you look at the overall game plan, depending on what the defense presents and depending on what we think we can put in that amount of time, it varies. The call sheet, obviously, throughout the years has kind of been similar as far as the volume numbers, and it just depends on whether or not it materializes in the game. Unfortunately, the other day we didn't have a lot of plays in the first half, the way it went, so in the second half we had to throw it more, and it got a little bit different. And it's been a funny year as far as that kind of stuff. Like, it's the game flows has been just different. We haven't been in a lot of normal flows, only a few times, like the Giants game, the Vikings, where we've had a consistent flow where plays are just kind of coming off the call sheet.
And how much are the fact that certain concepts, obviously the crossing routes, digs, stuff that haven't been as prevalent, is that related to Jalen and what he's comfortable doing, or what you guys think that he is best at doing?
I think if it presents itself that week, we usually have it in, and it's just whether or not we get to it in the game.
What kind of adjustments have you seen from defenses recently when it comes to the QB sneak?
So there's not like a huge thing that's going on. We've kind of tinkered with different things, and we will continue to kind of explore and experiment with different ways to get that done. Sometimes it's just luck of the draw. The other day was just unfortunate that the ball popped out. We've gotten pretty good movement in the last couple weeks on it. We just got to continue to work through it.
Nick has said you're still calling plays. In terms of the way that you approach that role and in the game planning of it, any of the responsibilities that you do, or maybe delegate? Have you changed any of those things?
No, I'm still calling the plays.
Kevin, the incident, did it leave you shaken? So, I mean, if it was my house and my family, I'd be scared, I'd be angry, and I would take measures to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
Were you scared? Were you angry? And have you taken measures to make sure it doesn't happen again?
When you talk about what had happened, I mean, ultimately, like you said, you want to be able to separate your job from your family. And, we talked about it before, I said it before, that line was crossed, and it was an unfortunate incident, and that's the part of it that happened. And, us as a family, we know we got to stick together. And to be honest, there's a lot of great people in the community. I have great neighbors. There's so many people that have reached out to my wife and I and our family. And so, it's not anything or one specific person. It happened, and we just got to move on from it at this point.
You're not uncomfortable being there. You're not uncomfortable, being in that neighborhood. You're not uncomfortable with sort of continuing things as they are.
I mean, no, we've had a great experience here, and that's what kind of I was alluding to earlier. We've had a great experience here in Philadelphia, and it's a very special, unique place, to work. And I look forward to, all the more games we have and finishing strong in the season.
Some have suggested maybe there would be some benefit to you moving up to the booth to call plays. Do you see any validity in that, or why is it still beneficial to be on the field?
Yeah, I think the communication with the players is important. Since I've been here in 21, I've been on the field every time. And I think there's a lot of communication with players, coaches on the field, making sure adjustments are done correctly. Conversations I have with Jalen, with the O-line, with the receivers that are very important. I've been on the field for a long, long time. I don't think I've been in the box since like maybe 2011 as a coach. So it's been a while. And I think just the relationship I have with the guys and the communication has been good. And we just got to continue to improve in other areas, and we'll be all right.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.